Welcome to Dinar Trend Tracker channel. One of the most contentious and hotly debated subjects in the world of virtual currencies, the potential launch of Tier 4B exchanges, is the subject we'll be covering today. A surprising uptick in discussion from purported insiders, redemption center employees, and currency holders asserting to have gotten early notifications has kept the dinar world abuzz with expectation for the past few weeks. Based on these assertions, the private exchanges of Iraqi dinars and Vietnamese dongs, which have been in the works for quite some time, might finally be getting underway. Rumor has it that certain investors' banks are showing Iraqi dinar and Vietnamese dong rates as either live or pending, albeit this is not officially confirmed. Some people say they have been scheduled for appointments, received secure verification calls, signed non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs. The revaluation community throughout the world is understandably agog with this. Still, the most important question is there. Is this just another round of speculation and excitement, or are we seeing the first wave of actual exchanges? What may be really happening behind the scenes in this well-guarded and clandestine process? We'll investigate the accusations more today and see how credible they are. The amount of engagement in online investor groups, dinar and dong forums, and Telegram channels has been absolutely phenomenal in the past few weeks. According to some participants, the private facilities that were supposed to handle Tier 4B exchanges, redemption centers, are now on high alert. A few so-called employees have dropped hints that they have been getting operational briefings, readiness confirmations, and schedule updates. As a result, many are wondering if notifications are on the horizon, giving long-term holders more reason to be optimistic. Certain prominent currency analysts have added fuel to the fire by speculating that certain banks have already issued live or pending dinar and dong rates internally. Some see this as a move away from theoretical re-evaluation and toward practical application, and they are right. Critics, meanwhile, point out that these claims won't be taken seriously until concrete evidence in the form of official confirmations or publicly available data becomes available. Although long-term holders have been patiently waiting for this process to occur for years, if not decades, their hopes have been renewed by the consistent insider discussion. There's no denying that the current momentum is different. Many people are attempting to figure out before making any big financial choice whether the difference is the result of real development or coordinated disinformation. For those unfamiliar with the currency revaluation system, it is essential to grasp what Tier 4B signifies before delving into the speculation. At Tier 4, following government bodies, private people and small groups are invited to exchange their holdings. This level is typically presented in simpler words. Tier 1 EVA, major institutional investors and humanitarian funds have finished their deals. Individuals with the B designation are not actively involved with government or military operations, but they may be appointed in advance to special rates. For a long time, this group has been at the center of the story about global revaluation, acting as the imagined link between the wealthy and the rest of us. Tier 4B is more than simply an opportunity for financial transformation, it's also a long sought-after symbol of the personal optimism that all the waiting and speculation would be worthwhile. Participants frequently have to depend on second-hand accounts and unidentified intelligence sources because the procedure is kept under wraps. While this lack of clarity has made it very difficult to confirm claims, it has also added intrigue and mystery, which keeps people interested in currencies around the world on the edge of their seats. Identifying the truth from the noise of internet speculation is one of the greatest issues surrounding the current wave of claims. Many failed attempts have happened throughout the years. Following the swift debunking of speculations regarding live rates and impending exchanges. For obvious reasons, investors are tired of and skeptical of this pattern. With each new flurry of news, though, hopes are rekindled, raising the possibility that the rumors are concealing some truth. Claiming to have received explicit funding instructions or rate confirmations, some people contend that these documents would not exist if nothing was happening. Some people think that banks have already sent messages saying that they are prepared to handle large currency exchanges soon. These assertions, however, remain anecdotal in the absence of credible documentation, government pronouncements, or independently verified facts. Curiously, there is an increasing amount of reports from unconnected sources to Bureau that are consistent and detail comparable timings and methods. For many investors, the mere convergence of information, even if it is unverified, is cause for concern. Eagerly awaiting the arrival of the long-awaited movement, which they expect to occur within the next 48 to 72 hours. In reality, what could be going on behind the scenes? Although the inner workings of high-security financial systems remain a mystery, the recent uptick in activity can be explained by a number of reasonable theories. As part of the pre-release preparations, some analysts have suggested that JEXI test transactions and internal rate adjustments could be taking place. Before launching on a wide scale, financial institutions and banks frequently undertake these test runs to check the functionality of their compliance, liquidity, and technology systems. On the other hand, some have suggested that this might be the first signs of FISIM, or selective early processing. Certain rumors may be intentionally planted to test market reactions or manage expectations, which can be problematic for persons involved in trial programs or humanitarian missions. The world's focus on the dinar and dong markets has never been higher, regardless of the validity of the competing theories. This much-anticipated event may finally be entering its operational phase in the next weeks, or investors may have to be ready for another round of waiting. Anyone keeping up with this intricate and ever-changing narrative will need to keep their feet firmly planted on confirmed information and resist the need to make emotional decisions. Tracking technical indicators. The world's currency experts and financial analysts are keeping a close eye on a number of institutional and technical indications that may indicate a shift in the way foreign exchange systems work is imminent. The biggest news is that PRI's interim rate placeholders have started showing up in banking networks, which means that there have been some internal adjustments. Some terminals reportedly showed live or pending revaluation rates for a short time before being quickly closed out, suggesting possibility, according to multiple sources. Cooperation between international monetary systems and their respective central banks. Some have speculated that the infrastructure needed to support a large-scale currency reset is being secretly tested right now due to these brief flashes. Reports on Boshan's settlement instructions are included, in addition to rates. Getting started with the specialized financial corridors is an important first step in getting systems ready for large-volume liquidity flow. The transition from planning to carrying out the transaction could have started if those settlement codes and entries in the digital ledger are indeed associated with tier IVB transactions. The frequency of these claims, particularly when they come from independent sources across multiple continents, has drawn the attention of many seasoned observers, even though hard evidence is still elusive. As these changes take place, technology will play an increasingly important role. There is an increasing amount of discussion over cutting-edge digital platforms and settlement methods of the future. As a potential theoretical framework to facilitate cross-border asset-backed transactions that are rapid, secure, and transparent, many in the community are referring to the reported Quantum Financial System, or QFS. Even though it hasn't been officially announced, many think the QFS is a huge step forward for currency reconciliation. According to reports, limited participant-controlled settings may already be used for real-time testing to ensure system stability. Proponents of the theory state that this explains, rather than random anomalies, why certain insiders report seeing data pertaining to exchanges appear and vanish from institutional terminals for brief periods of time. If even half of these claims are true, it would have far-reaching consequences, rendering the theoretical basis for a revaluation event moot. Albeit it serves its purpose. Experts have long hypothesized that a solid digital infrastructure must be put in place prior to any realignment of global currencies. It now seems like that scene is quietly developing behind closed systems, laying the framework for what might eventually become public knowledge. Controlled rollout and confidentiality. Experts concur that any rollout would be carried out under extraordinarily stringent supervision due to the magnitude and sensitivity of a possible worldwide currency adjustment. Premature disclosure may cause unexpected market reactions, therefore it's doubtful that anyone, not even the major financial media, would have advance notice. Essential components of this rollout plan are confidentiality agreements, non-disclosure agreements, encrypted communications, and scheduled private appointments. Details regarding fees, processes, and timing are kept highly hidden by having participants sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, according to various sources. Given the enormous sums of money and liquidity at stake, the level of secrecy surrounding this matter is hardly unexpected. To preserve the systems and the market stability, some have speculated that exchanges may happen in waves, with smaller regulated groups initiating the process before it progressively expands. The article goes on to say that before any appointments are verified, participants' identities and currency holdings are checked through complex verification processes. Exactly why the dinar and the dong have become celebrities. Because of widespread belief that the Vietnamese dong and the Iraqi are undervalued in comparison to their country's economic potential, these three currencies remain front and center in discussions about worldwide revaluation. Rebuilding Iraq's financial infrastructure is a steady process. Restoring faith in the currency by bolstering its exchange rate with reserves backed by oil and executing monetary reforms. At the same time, because to steady trade surpluses and massive influx of foreign investment, Vietnam has emerged as one of Asia's most dynamic industrial hubs. The dong's low value relative to its regional rivals persists despite Vietnam's economic successes. According to experts, both currencies indicate economies that are about to gain more attention from around the world and could see major changes in their price. Despite the lack of official confirmation, the dinar and dong continue to be the center of attention due to the economic momentum of both nations and the belief that they will soon be able to reflect their true market potential in a rebalanced global system through the purported exchange process. Reports from insiders and online groups about what's going on at high-security exchange facilities are strikingly similar. These assertions state that the participating centers have state-of-the-art authentication systems that can check the serial numbers and authenticity of each note of cash. According to the newly established asset-backed standards, these facilities use scanning technology that verifies the authenticity, registration, and redemption eligibility of each bill in real time. After verification, digital ledger systems supposedly reflect updated balances in real time, and they can connect to a larger decentralized network that goes beyond the typical SWIFT architecture. This may be the first real example of a new financial infrastructure that is supposed to be more open, secure, and quick to respond than the old ones, according to some experts. The existing signs point to a planned, gradual rollout rather than a single, abrupt global debut. An incremental approach that is reasonable for a change of this magnitude, guaranteeing a seamless transition. When there is even a small sign of improvement after more than a decade of waiting, excitement levels rise to new heights. Still, one of the biggest obstacles is sorting out real news from fake rumors. You should approach many of the tales that are making the rounds today with a fair dose of skepticism, since they are just restating old claims that never materialized. The convergence of information from various independent sources who describe comparable methods, vocabulary, and procedural patterns is what sets this current round apart, according to some observers. The claims of first-hand banking or compliance experience made by a few of these sources add credibility to their findings. Also, although official confirmation is still pending, conversations between private financial experts and contractors working on the redemption centers do indicate that logistical cooperation is taking place. Still, most of this stuff is just conjecture because there isn't any publicly available proof of it. Investors should avoid making rash, emotionally driven decisions and instead approach every claim with a critical eye, double-checking dates and consistency. The most important thing to remember is that no authority organization has officially announced a revaluation, even though there are credible indications of preparation. It is crucial to exercise caution, stay educated, and base decisions on factual analysis instead of relying solely on hope until such validation happens. When and where it occurs. When it comes to changes in the financial markets, timing is everything. Also, October is starting to seem like a window of opportunity for strategic moves. Liquidity adjustments are typically supported by the circumstances that occur around this time, which include fiscal year-end reconciliations, budgetary changes, and realignments of central banks. The Iraqi government is currently in the midst of its fiscal planning cycle, which may present a chance to implement novel funding strategies. Noted by analysts is the recent collaboration between the U.S. A possible indication that the structural foundation for exchange activity is being concluded is the intensification of relations between the U.S. Treasury, foreign financial networks, and the Central Bank of Iraq. Rumor has it that a number of big EU banks are on high alert for potential situations involving the redemption of foreign money, however no one has confirmed this. The absence of an official statement is likely due to confidentiality regulations prohibiting personnel from publicly disclosing operational details. At the same time, everyone is keeping a close eye on the Central Bank of Iraq for any new policy announcements. If there are any regarding exchange rate management, digital payment integrations, or foreign reserve updates, even small steps could confirm that larger systemic changes are happening and that the much discussed revaluation is getting closer than ever before. The broader view? The wider monetary ramifications might be eye-opening if Tier 4B exchanges are indeed happening behind the scenes. Currency valuations and global asset movements could be affected by the controlled entry of large amounts of liquidity into the market. Market sentiment and the price of commodities. Due to the potential instability of current markets caused by an abrupt public revaluation, analysts recommend a phased, discrete rollout as the sole reasonable method for handling such a complex event. From a macroeconomic perspective, the silent execution would make sense if stories of exchange appointments and receipt confirmations had any merit. There have been cases when people have asserted ownership of transaction receipts that indicate funds listed as pending or restricted, along with exchange rates that are far higher than the current market value. In all likelihood, those specifics point to a pre-release liquidity phase, the time between the two major synchronization events that took place on a worldwide scale. This would be a huge psychological change for the Dinar and Dong people, in addition to a financial one. Converting years of anticipation, investigation, and optimism into quantifiable outcomes. The long-rumored revaluation would now be confirmed as a true, coordinated process taking place behind the scenes in interconnected financial networks, according to many. Evaluation of reliability, restatement following over a decade of expectation, any indication of advancement invariably causes a surge of enthusiasm. One of the biggest problems in this field is sorting out real news from fake rumors. A fair dose of skepticism is in order because many of the stories making the rounds today are carbon copies of claims that never materialized. What, however, distinguishes this round from the others? Information on procedures, terminology, and procedural patterns can come from a variety of sources, some of which are unrelated to one another. The claims of first-hand banking or compliance experience made by a few of these sources add credibility to their findings. Also, private financial consultants and redemption center contractors have been talking, so it's safe to assume that logistics are being coordinated, even though formal confirmation is still pending. Still, most of this stuff is just conjecture because there isn't any publicly available proof of it. Rather than making rash decisions based on emotions, investors should carefully consider each claim, verifying dates and consistency. The most important thing to remember is that even though there are good indicators that things are getting ready, no official organization has declared a confirmed reassessment just yet. It is crucial to exercise caution, stay educated, and base decisions on factual analysis instead of relying solely on hope until such validation happens. Rhythm and setting, restatement. October appears to be forming into a possible strategic window, and timing has always been a major factor in financial swings. Liquidity adjustments and international settlements tend to occur around this time because it is typically when fiscal year-end reconciliations, realignments of central banks, and budgetary transitions take place. It may be possible to implement new financial mechanisms in Iraq without causing a huge upheaval as the government is still in the midst of its budget planning cycle. Noted by analysts is the recent collaboration between the U.S. A possible indication that the structural foundation for exchange operations is being finished is the intensification of networks between the Central Bank of Iraq and Treasury International. Furthermore, there have been unverified claims circulating that several big EU banks have been put on internal notice for potential scenarios involving the redemption of foreign currency, WISPR, 2017. The absence of an official statement is likely due to confidentiality regulations prohibiting personnel from publicly disclosing operational details. Exchange rate management, digital payment connections, and updates on foreign reserves are some of the topics that keen observers are keeping an eye out for in the event that the Central Bank of Iraq makes any new policy announcements. These small steps could prove, in a roundabout sense, that larger systemic changes are taking place and that the much-touted reassessment is getting closer by the day. The larger view, restating the obvious, the wider financial ramifications could be enormous if Tier 4B exchanges are indeed happening behind the scenes. Currency valuations, global asset flows, commodity pricing, and investor mood are all susceptible to changes in response to large amounts of market liquidity, even when introduced in regulated steps. According to analysts, the most sensible way to handle such a complicated event would be to implement it in staggered, separate steps.
current markets could be unsettled by an abrupt and widely reported revaluation.
Cause market speculation to increase, which in turn threatens the stability that central banks have come to provide.
From a macroeconomic perspective, the silent execution would make sense if stories of exchange appointments and receipt confirmations had any merit.
Some people have even gone so far as to say they have transaction receipts that show monies listed as pending, restricted, or awaiting release, with exchange rates that are much greater than what the market is currently worth.
These information, if they are genuine, may indicate a liquidity phase before the release. Concluding remarks.
There is no denying the excitement around the latest batch of reports. Indicators appear new, more ordered, more aligned, and maybe more genuine this time around, according to many investors, after years of conjecture, false starts, and carefully managed expectations. Discussions that were formerly limited to specialty forums have now grown to encompass broader financial topics, capturing the interest of both economists and analysts from alternative media. Nevertheless, it is essential to maintain a level head in the face of the increasing activities. True validation will only come via consistent, even while improvement may be happening behind closed doors. Results that can be seen, including confirmed rate changes, open statements from institutions, or coordinated policy releases from critical central banks.
The best course of action is to use disciplined skepticism and diligent observation until such signals come.
A possible reorganization of the interplay of currencies in a worldwide system is the central plot point, and it has revolutionary potential to alter the course of financial history. The revaluation community is certainly gaining pace, regardless of whether Tier 4B exchanges are fully functioning or only in advanced testing. If this long-awaited financial shift is finally about to happen, it will be revealed in the weeks and months to come.
If you've been listening to Iraqi Dinar Info channel, we appreciate you. Insightful analysis like this can only happen if you like, subscribe, and activate notifications. That way, you won't miss our next in-depth look at the latest news surrounding the dinar revaluation narrative and worldwide currency movements. After waiting for almost a decade, the investing community gets giddy at the slightest sign of movement, so we can finally assess credibility. However, one of the biggest obstacles in this field is distinguishing between real developments and false rumors. A fair dose of skepticism is in order because many of the stories making the rounds today are carbon copies of claims that never materialized. What, however, distinguishes this round from the others? Multiple unconnected sources describing comparable methods, vocabulary, and even procedural patterns have come together, according to some observers. It is stated that several of these sources have backgrounds in banking or compliance, supporting the credibility of their findings. Also, although official confirmation is still pending, conversations between private financial experts and contractors working on the redemption centers do indicate that logistical cooperation is taking place. Still, most of this stuff is just conjecture because there isn't any publicly available proof of it. Investors should avoid making rash decisions based on emotions and should instead carefully examine each claim, checking for consistency, and verifying timelines. That is the main point, last. The most important thing to remember is that no official organization has declared a confirmed re-evaluation just yet, even though there are reasonable indicators of readiness. It is crucial to exercise caution, stay educated, and base decisions on factual analysis instead of relying solely on hope until such validation happens. Context and timing, last. When it comes to changes in the financial markets, timing is everything. October is starting to seem like a window of opportunity for strategic moves. Liquidity adjustments and international settlements tend to occur around this time because it is typically when fiscal year-end reconciliations, realignments of central banks, and budgetary transitions take place. It may be possible to implement new financial mechanisms in Iraq without causing a huge upheaval as the government is still in the midst of its budget planning cycle. Some have speculated that the recent stepped-up coordination between the U.S. Treasury, foreign financial networks, and the Central Bank of Iraq could be a sign that the framework for exchange transactions is nearing completion. Furthermore, there have been unverified claims circulating that several big EU banks have been put on internal notice for potential scenarios involving the redemption of foreign currency, WISPR, 2017. Reportedly, employees are not allowed to reveal operational details publicly due to confidentiality requirements, so that the absence of a formal statement can be understood.
Meanwhile, everyone is keeping a close eye on the Central Bank of Iraq for any new policy announcements. They are especially interested in hearing about updates on foreign reserves, digital payment integrations, and exchange rate management. These small steps could prove, in a roundabout sense, that larger systemic changes are taking place and that the much-touted reassessment is getting closer by the day. Finally, looking at the broader financial consequences, if Tier 4B exchanges are really happening behind the scenes, might be rather significant. Even in well-orchestrated stages, the flood of capital into the market can affect commodity prices, investor mood, and global asset movements, which in turn can affect currency valuations. According to analysts, the most sensible way to handle such a complicated event would be to implement it in staggered, separate steps. The capacity of central banks to keep prices stable may be jeopardized if there was an abrupt and widely publicized revaluation, which would cause speculative capital movements and market instability. From a macroeconomic perspective, the silent execution would make sense if stories of exchange appointments and receipt confirmations had any merit. Some people have even gone so far as to say they have transaction receipts that show monies listed as pending, restricted, or awaiting release, with exchange rates that are much greater than what the market is currently worth. More than merely a financial development, such information, if accurate, could suggest a pre-release liquidity phase. A huge psychological shift would occur in the Dinar and Dong communities as a result of this occurrence, turning years of waiting, research, and hope into tangible outcomes. Many would see it as proof that the much-touted revaluation is happening in the actual world, behind the scenes in complex financial networks, and not just talk.